Hello and welcome to Reimagining Love. I'm Dr. Alexandra Solomon. I have been studying relationships for over 20 years as a couples therapist, a professor, an award-winning author, and as a wife, mother, daughter, sister, and friend. Now, I'm inviting you into this space each week as I dig into some of the toughest and most fascinating relational dilemmas of our time. If you want to discover how to create vibrant and loving relationships in your own life, you have come to the right place. This is Reimagining Love. Hi there. I hope that your summer is going well. I'll tell you what, over here in Reimagining Love Land, we are doing some really fun experimentation with the podcast, including putting out mailbag episodes where I get to address your questions directly. I've really been enjoying hearing from you, getting a sense of the challenges that you're facing and what you're wanting and needing from your intimate relationships. So I hope that you keep submitting your questions. You know to head to the show notes of any of our episodes to get that link. And today, we're sharing the first of a very special kind of episode that we're trying out this summer called R&R, Revisit and Reflect. We're living in a time of information abundance, sometimes more like information overload, and lots of that information is about mental health and about relational health. And you know I'm here for it. Heck, I'm out here creating lots of it. But I want to remind you that there is a difference between consuming content and integrating content. When we consume, the information sort of passes through us. And when we integrate, the information personalizes into us. It weaves its way into ourselves, into our unique story of who we are, into our unique situation, creating insight and creating the conditions for a shift in our mindset, in our emotions, in our beliefs, in our behavior. And I'm always thinking about how to create opportunities for you on this podcast to integrate everything we talk about on Reimagining Love. I do that, for example, by posing relational self-awareness questions during our solo episodes. Well, these R&R episodes that we're releasing this summer are all about supporting your process of integration. So what we're going to do is revisit some of my favorite moments from the show's catalog. We're going to listen together to a great clip of audio, and then we're going to journal together. It's going to be like our own little mini therapy session. So you'll listen to the clip. You can jot down any notes or any parts that are resonating for you. And then when the clip is done, I'm going to come back on and I'm going to share 3 journaling prompts. And you'll be able to also find those journaling prompts in the show notes if you'd rather read them or if you'd additionally like to read them before you start journaling. Now, I know as you're listening, you might be tempted just to listen through the episode and then go about the rest of your day. And trust me, I get it. You're busy. It's the summer. There's shit to do. But if you want to get the most out of this episode, reflecting and connecting what you're learning here to your own life is the key to making changes and having breakthroughs that can actually lead to transformation. So my hope is that you're going to get your favorite journal and your favorite pen and do the R&R exercise after the audio plays. Today, for our R&R, we are revisiting the very first episode of Reimagining Love. That's right. Our very first guest was my friend and colleague, Esther Perel. I tell you, we were not messing around when we launched this show. We really came out hot. I've been wanting to revisit this episode with you for a couple of different reasons. Well, for one thing, it's a little bit of a time capsule because we recorded it in the fall of 2021. We were still in the pandemic. We were reckoning with huge changes in our world and mass grief, uncertainty, the impact of lockdown. In fact, the clip I'm going to share with you today starts with Esther and I discussing how delineation was lost during the pandemic, delineation between work and play, between home and office, between business and intimacy. And while we're living in a very different world these days, many of us never went back to an office, or those lines remain blurred for us in our lives for any number of reasons. And also our experiences of collective grief, deep, deep, deep uncertainty, that all continues. We're facing a deluge of heartbreaking and terrifying world events that challenge our sense of safety, the safety of our loved ones, that challenge our strongly held beliefs about who we are, what we think our lives should look like, what we thought our lives would look like. And so for all of those reasons, this conversation truly is evergreen. We're all still trying to figure out what resilience means to us, how to find joy and play even as we experience despair, how to ensure that our relationships can thrive within the context of our busy lives, within the context of a very, very complicated world. In this clip, Esther and I also talk through a really insightful listener question that's about relational ambivalence. And even though it was posed in the context of the pandemic, the context of a relationship on lockdown, it is a perennial challenge. And I guarantee that you have faced some version at one time or another of this listener's question or her concern. So take a listen to the clip, and then I'll be back with you at the end of it to share those journaling prompts. Okay, see you on the other side.
We have a ritual, a complete ritual that accompanies these activities that become signifiers of the transition from work to going out, to going to see friends, to going to exercise, to right now, the collapse of those delineations, what you call the day, the night, the world, that collapse, it's so important to understand what it does to us, why we are exhausted. We're not just exhausted because we're sitting in front of the screen the whole day. That exhaustion is because there is a collapse of all the boundaries and what helps. And all the roles are happening in the same place without any geolocation. And I think what really helps in situations like this is the rituals. Like you're saying, I play music, I change clothes, I close my door, I leave my phone, I clean the table, I turn it from office and desk to dinner table. What is a ritual? It is a routine that is invested with intention so that it elevates it and it creates a symbolic meaning to it. Everybody knows that it is also your desk. But when you actually put the candles on it and the nice glasses, the ritual of setting the table transforms the desk into a dining table. And that gives it a new meaning so that when you sit at that table, you will act differently than when you're sitting and thinking that you're eating at your desk. Mm-hmm. So you'll feel differently, you'll sit differently, you'll have different conversations, etc., etc. I can't overemphasize this.
Yes.
It's really important for people to stay grounded. That is part of the grounding.
That's right. We use space, we use physical objects to ground. I mean, yeah, that's right. Okay, let us do our listener question. She has written in to us from the UK, and she's asked us not to use her name, but here's what she writes. She says, "My partner has been a real support to me during the pandemic. I have been so anxious about the virus, work, and family. We have been working and living together in a tiny flat. We have hardly been able to see family or friends. He is lovely to live with, but we don't have any personal space or variety. I have found it hard to find things for us to do together. I think our self-care has fallen off of a cliff's edge. I am struggling to remember better times before COVID. I love him, but I have started to question if I ever had the feeling of falling in love that people talk about. I should feel excited about the next stage of our lives, but I'm scared. I'm scared by the idea of being together and the idea of being apart. We are on a break because I feel so anxious. He is wonderful. I hate to have hurt him. I feel so ungrateful. I don't trust myself to decide if I want to take this relationship forward. How do I know what is COVID, what is us, and what is me? And how do I get clarity about what to do? It's a beautiful question from a woman who is trying really hard to be thoughtful, to be planful. I hear that she's being quite hard on herself about all of what feels. I mean, I have heard variations of this story so many times of, I don't know what I want. I don't feel good in, I don't feel good out. That relational ambivalence is such a common theme. And I was thinking about one of the things we don't know about her is her cultural locations, but it reminds me of what we were saying in the beginning of this highly individualistic model of the world. I think when one has experienced quite a bit of privilege or advantage, I'm thinking about around race, around financial security, there's a sense of like an assumptive world, right? That the world is kind of happening over there, but my intimate relationship happens over here. And so I get to have linearity, I get to have choice, and I get to have my love story kind of unfettered by the crises of the world around me. And so I don't know if part of her grief is that that's what she's also lost, the loss of this assumption that she could have a life that didn't have to do what your parents' life did, which was bend around a massive collective crisis and what so many people's lives have had to do, which is just bend with the crises of the world. What stands out to you about this question? Where would you want to go with it?
I mean, I think, first of all, what you just highlighted is very interesting, because if indeed, I don't know if I feel flat because I just don't have those feelings for him, or how much it is a result of having been in lockdown with him. I mean, how can you separate the two? Life takes place in a context. And the context is that you may have been originally under the assumption that you know exactly how you feel because what you're feeling is separate from the big issues of the world. And right now you have just discovered that the big issues of the world are under your sheets. And therefore, when you don't feel interested in him and you don't feel like you want to take care of yourself and you feel complacent and you feel like, what difference does it make? You suddenly wonder. So the interesting thing is that people who actually have lived with the big issues under their sheets are often much more intentionally invested in protecting their individual freedom, whatever little bit they can control, in light of all the freedoms that have been taken from them. I did a lot of work early on with families under communism or just coming out from communism, and people fought for freedom. People fought for individuality. Like makeup was one of the most important things of self-care, not because makeup, but because makeup was a way of marking individuality in a society where there was none. What is a freedom is different depending on what is taken away from you. Now, you've moved out. That's an interesting thing, I would say, as I listen to her. I also don't know how long you've been together. I also don't know anything about what he has felt. You're telling the story in first person plural as we, but you're the one that tells the story. You're the storyteller. And I would love to hear how your partner, I think it's a he in this instance,
it is,
right?
It is.
Is telling you the story too. Because maybe you have a partner who tells the story of he has actually remained very engaged and wants to reach out and you're not responsive, or he went flat. And so as a result, you went flat, and the more flat you went and the more flat he went, and just each one reinforced the flatness of the other. That's another feedback loop. So how do you turn that around? You become very willful and intentional and premeditated. You don't hope for something to just come back from God knows where, because it won't. You say, I'm going to make sure that we do certain things that bring us together around shared interest, around shared energy, around attention, around focus, around presence. Whichever version of it takes, there's not a one-size-fits-all. It may be related to nature, to food, to art, to physical activity, to intellectual pursuit, but it is about saying we need to reconnect. And how do we do that? What does it mean for us? Does it mean that we need to just take the time to say we're going to sit next to each other, experience each other's physical presence, put our hands on top of each other, not just watch a thing passively, but maybe watch a thing and then take a walk and talk about the thing we just watched. Eat together and not just feed ourselves for sustenance, but really commune, congregate, do what people do around the table, which is the table brings us together to talk about 10 other things. Talk with curiosity. Part of what's interesting for me with this question to this person, I would say, I would love for you to play my game.
That's right. I was thinking about that too.
So where should we begin? A game of stories is my pandemic project, where I really thought exactly that. I miss intimacy. I miss connection. I miss conversations around my table. I miss my friends. I miss having a form of engagement with my partner, etc. And I thought, I'm not alone. So I'm going to create an experience that is playful, and play, like all forms of play, is a container, a permission giver for boldness and risk taking. In this instance, asking people to tell certain kinds of stories. You can play it in many different variations. And I would say each of you pick 10 cards. They invite storytelling from each other and see where that takes you so that you don't stay at the ground level. Take the elevator and go up and start looking and re-noticing things. So this is my game. You can do any other game. I just think this one is exactly with that in mind, because you're sitting there and thinking, I just don't have that feeling. I don't know where, and you do like this and you realize that there is no pulse. And I'm saying pulse comes from activity. The activity raises your heart rate. If you want your heart rate to go up, you need to do things that are going to stimulate it. If you're just sitting there and you're saying, I don't feel anything, you ain't going to feel anything. So I would work with you on how you can generate energy inside of you. How do you turn yourself on? How do you awaken yourself? How do you connect with your own aliveness? And then how do you also shut it down? Because if you shut it down, your partner can do all kinds of things and you won't be responsive. And we are going to work in very concrete ways that you can be engaging and engaged. And then we will know if your relationship is responsive to it and is feeding off of it. It's like you crank it up and then finally the thing starts driving again. Well, then you know that the problem was here. If you crank it up and the thing still doesn't move, then maybe there is not enough flicker left to turn it into a flame. But at least stimulate the flicker.
That's right. And at least resist the urge that something must be wrong with us if we have to generate the flicker, right? Because that's another piece of it, is like, we got this game. Okay, let's play Esther's game. Let's see what happens with this game. If that's the attitude of like, let's see what happens with this game, of like, will this work? It's not going to work.
I'm so glad you brought this up, because otherwise everything is a test.
That's right.
No, and everything is a make it or break it. You're doing this because this is what happens, because every relationship needs to resuscitate at some point. And then you can find out what made it lose air. But first of all, don't think of it as it's a diagnostic sign of we are doomed.
Right. She's used the word anxiety, so we have a bit of a clue of sort of the different roads that her mind is at risk of going down. She also goes down this road of, I love him, but I've started to question if I ever had the feeling of falling in love that people talk about. And so she's kind of like widening out to start to question the entire premise upon which this relationship was built. And so I would want to do just a little bit of psychoeducation with her as well and give her some permission to know that there are lots of entrees into a love story, right? Lots of first chapters of a love story. And some people do fall in love, but some of us step into love, and it's no better and no worse. And so I worry about the way in which her anxiety is taking on a life of its own, perhaps, and saying, see, now I never even fell in love with him, versus kind of anchoring on some of the knowns. And some of the knowns, I love how she started. He has been a support to me during this time. Okay, so what is it about his steadiness, right, that really can feel anchoring, that feels like he can be that person for you? He's got your back. He's a man of his word. What he says, he means, all of that, which there's a loveliness to that, part of likely what drew her to him. And then, as in every quality, there's the double-edged sword, right? So now perhaps she is really focusing on what comes along with somebody who's very reliable, is perhaps he also can get kind of simple and dug in, and perhaps he may be quite a bit more comfortable in this simple, lots of days look the same, because that's his energy, that's his personality. He can be really comfortable with a kind of simplicity. And that then she layers the story of, but if he's okay like that, it means we're doomed. It means there's nothing. Versus what about her taking the lead and bringing out the game, or bringing out the candles, or providing a bit of creativity? And if he'll come with her, right? There's a difference between somebody who rolls their eyes and says, you've got to be kidding, we're going to play what now?
Yep.
And somebody who says, we're going to play what now? You're taking me where? To do what? And can she be the one who tends to be just a half step ahead on some of the erotic, the imaginative, and can that be just a loveliness about their relationship? He brings this and she brings this. And the question really is more whether he can respond to her bids rather than saying, we must be doomed because he's not the one who went and bought Esther's game.
This is so important because the assumption is if I loved him, if I was in love with him, I would feel X, Y, Z. This, what you just said, that the fact that he's responsive to her bids. Say it again, because I want to frame it. That's the psychoed piece here that is really essential.
Yeah. Well, there's a world of difference.
No, but say it again. Say it again. I want to underline.
Okay, with a highlighter. What matters is how he responds to her bids. So if she says to herself, but I'm the one that makes the bids and I'm the one with the creative ideas, therefore he must not love me, that story will sink them. Versus when I bring a playful idea or a silly idea, his eyes light up a bit and he will do that for me and with me. That's lovely that you don't have to be the same. I hope that if and when she comes with a bit of novelty or a new way of imagining the same space they've been in, I hope that he will respond. And I hope that she will feel proud that she brought the idea to him rather than disgruntled. Like, here we go again. Why do I have to bring the ideas? Well, because perhaps he brings the reliability or he brings the wonderful hug when you get anxious.
And this is a he, she. This is a couple's dynamic. In heterosexual couples, it sometimes is defined in gender terms, but I really think it's a dynamic. It's a dynamic that you also see when one person initiates sexuality more often.
Mm-hmm.
The sex initiator to other people, you check the responsiveness. That's what really matters. The one who does the cooking, the one who does and who wishes that the other person did, rather than the one who does gets to do what they want to do.
That's right.
And did she ever tell him? I really appreciate how much you've been so supportive. I really love it. That in itself brings energy into a relationship. That acknowledgement of how important the other is, of how much they mean to you, in how much they enable you to then do what you like to do because they're doing their bid.
That's right.
And you don't have to think about that part because they're inhabiting that part. So every time you think, why am I only doing this? You have to put in your mind that you're only doing this because the other parts that you don't do are being done by somebody else too.
Yes, widen out the lens. Yes, you are the one who initiates sexuality, but they are the one who initiates cooking or who pays the bills. If you widen out and you look at the whole of the relationship across different domains, there may be that one is the initiator and one is the responder.
I think when the feeling is, I do it all and you don't even notice, and there is no appreciation for what I do, and there is no acknowledgement for what I do, then the depletion is in course.
Yes.
If you do, but the other person says, I couldn't do it without you. I'm in awe of you. How do you do all of these things? Rachel Butzman says something very interesting, and she talks about trust. And she says that trust in the context of adaptation is not about needing to know more and experiencing more safety. It's actually about being able to tolerate uncertainty.
Yes. Together.
This is the adaptation of the moment.
Yeah. Beautiful. There's so much to learn from this conversation. I hope that you enjoyed revisiting it or perhaps hearing it for the first time if you are a newer listener. So it's now time to get out your journal or pull up your notes app to answer the following questions. So here are our journaling prompts. Here's the first one. How do the macro issues of the world shape your love life today? To what degree are you able to give yourself permission for play and pleasure, even as the world feels so hard? What allows you to do that? Journaling prompt number 2. In this clip, Esther reminds us that if you don't know how to turn yourself on, there's nothing your partner can do to turn you on. How are you finding ways to connect to your own aliveness? What are some things that you can do this week just for you that could help you connect to your inner spark? Think of 3 things, and these could be from any realm of experience. Think about nature, art, food, movement, building, expressing, play. Journaling prompt number 3. In this clip, Esther and I talk about how for a couple to create an experience together, one partner is the initiator and one partner is the responder. One partner makes the bid, the other one responds to the bid. Now, those roles aren't fixed, but which role do you tend to find yourself in more in your relationship? What do you like about being in each position? The one who bids and the one who responds? And what's difficult or challenging about being in each of those positions? The initiator position, the responder position. Okay, happy journaling. I will see you next time here on Reimagining Love. Thank you for listening to our show. Our producers are Elizabeth Vogt and Mary Chan and Katie Pagich of Organized Sound Productions. Our theme music was composed by Slade Warnkin. The show is executive produced by me, Dr. Alexandra Solomon. Do you have a relationship question that you want answered on the show? Visit reimagininglove.com to send in a written or audio question. Questions can be about intimate partnerships, family relationships, friendships, you name it. If you're looking for more love and relationship content, you can find me on Instagram at dr.alexandra.solomon or visit my website, dralexandrasolomon.com, where you'll find my blog as well as the Intimate Relationships 101 e-course based off of the popular class I teach at Northwestern University. Thank you for listening and see you next week here on Reimagining Love.